Sure. Hey guys, good evening all. This is Vignesh here. Think we have already reached the time, and I see if you are joining. I guess we can still spare a minute, and then perhaps we can ask this Diksha to start.
Yes, yes.
All right. Yeah, I think we have reached a minute more, and
Yes.
yeah, I would like to first of all welcome everyone to another session of Splunk Mumbai User Group, and this is going to be an interesting session because this is upon ES Enterprise Security. So I would like to ask audience like how many of you are aware of enterprise security? Please feel free to speak. Like we just want to make it more interactive. So,
Hi.
um, yeah,
Yeah, I've been working with enterprise security for at least 2 years.
Charles, you're not audible. I think you're speaking something. Deb is also saying he used Splunk ES.
yeah. I think Charles, your voice was a little low, but I could hear that he said he has been working on Splunk ES for quite some time.
Yes,
Right, Charles?
yes, that is what I say.
Oh, okay, cool. Thanks. I see Deb has replied. Anyone else? Ashish, thank you. All right. I think quite few Vikram also says yes. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your response. So I think quite few have experience, but not majority. But still, I think it would be a great session to have a very good understanding about a specific part, but not completely on the complete ES, but a specific part of ES. So I would like to give Diksha a chance and ask her to take it ahead. Diksha,
Yep. Thanks, Vignesh.
thank you.
So hi all, welcome to the another session of Splunk Mumbai User Group. Me and Vignesh Naidu will be presenting this session to you all. Just some of the details before we start. You can join Splunk Mumbai User Group on Slack. Q&A can be also posted there. Also for during this session, you can post your question and answers in the conversations. Slides recording and feedback form will be posted on the event page after the session. Okay, so about me. Myself, Diksha Negi, having 2+ years of Splunk experience working as a project lead at Avotrix. Also having hands-on Splunk Enterprise Security, ITSI, APM, Phantom, and UBA. I do create blogs and documents to share Splunk knowledge. Also working as an internal trainer for Splunk in Avotrix. So guys, this is our team for Mumbai User Group. Vikram Yadav, Ashwin Pandey, Vignesh Naidu, and Ajit Nayak. So as it's been already discussed that today's topic is Splunk ES, and basically we'll focus on asset and IT concepts in Splunk ES. Guys, this is our agenda. So firstly, we'll get a bit of intro about Splunk ES, how Splunk ES basically works, how do it manage incidents, because as we have all know, it is so good for security management incidents, right? And after that, we'll move towards the basic concept of asset and identity, how to get data for asset and identity into Splunk ES, how to generate a query to use that data, then create and look up. Post that, we will see some use case and we'll conclude our session. Okay, let's move to Splunk ES basics. By basic, we mean, if I'm saying basics of something, it means they are the pillar of that, right? So these 5 points written here are the pillar of Splunk ES, or I can say basic building blocks: incident management, adaptive response, asset and identity, threat intel, and risk. If I'll tell you in a short story what happens, sometimes Splunk ES gets something which is fishy, or it can be a threat to your network via your data and your created safe search. So it generates an alert, or we can say security threat. Okay. Post that, according to the severity level, the work or the incident get assigned to the SOC engineers, and they started working on them and investigate them. Once they learn the threat in maturity, and then what they do, they build adaptive response. What are adaptive response? Suppose we have 50 alerts in a day. Out of them 20, they are like general use case and like so similar to each other, need same response. We can do one thing, we can build adaptive response so that bulk of things which are similar can be worked in a way. Post to that, let's move to asset and identity and threat intel. These three things used here for data enrichment, and as we all guys are working on Splunk, we know how much data enrichment is important to get into more details for Splunk. Okay, so fifth is risk. Splunk ES calculate risk. Risk on what? Risk on asset and identity. Asset is basically the workstation in the network, and identity is your user identity in the network. So according to the number of incidents generated on your assets, on your identity, it calculates risk score. Okay, so now we have learned basic about Splunk. We have known some terms which maybe some of us are not knowing earlier. Now see how they work in a flows to manage an incident. So this is a basic scenario, guys. Like in my company, I have a Windows system, I have a firewall system, and I have an Active Directory server. So from all these data source, obviously I'll collect my data. Now here I have written CIM compatible data source, because all who has worked on ES, they know that ES gives you so much things automated, right? But you should have CIM compatible data source for that. It's not that you can't work on simple data, you can, but for using the best properties of Splunk ES, it is recommended to have CIM compatible data source. And you know, CIM compatible means into data model. Next is correlation search. Guys, correlation search is nothing. It is same as Save Search developed in Splunk. So for Splunk, yes, you have to develop a correlation search. Suppose I'm saying that today Diksha logged into a network, but she got failed. Then I have to write a query, index equal to something and user action equal to fail, right? So that is my correlation search here. After that, so here comes a new term, notable event. Generally in normal Splunk, what does happen that we generate an alert, but we'll give action like alert to give an email, or maybe we will use AWS Lambda action, or maybe there's a new app right now, we can use Twilio app to send our alert actions, right? So there are so many alert action configured and present in Splunk base. We can use any. Now for Splunk, yes, we have new term known as notable event. It means whenever that alert get triggered, it creates a notable event. That is the action we will set it here. You will get an option in Splunk, yes, okay, to create a notable event. So what does this notable event means? Simply you are noting that event, okay? After that, now these three things I'm showing you here, it will show you exactly how Splunk manages on a broad way, right? So you have an investigation review dashboard in Splunk ES, where basically all the alerts which are generated, all the notable events which are generated will be seen here, and you can review everything about them. Okay, even you can see who is working on them, everything you can review here. After that, like once the notable event is generating, that we can set, I told you that SOC engineer will work on that, right? So similar way, the incident team will start working on them, and some admin will assign each task to them. Now when they started working, they're going with their founding, they are changing the status of the error, like it is solved or not. Everything will get into KV store collections to build further more dashboards. I hope like no queries till now, or we have understood basic Splunk ES. Okay. So I have told you like basic Splunk ES, so I think I should show you Splunk ES UI. That will be very helpful. So if some people have not worked on, this is enterprise security app. Okay, I'll click here. So guys, these are all the options. And if you have heard me very clearly, then you would have been known till now some of the terms of this, like investigation, incident, right? If I'll go to audit, I'll go for investigation overview dashboard, right? Let's see what is going on here. So this is something internally we have built for this session. Okay, last year, the investigation in collaboration, let's see how many investigation we got, or I can say how many notable events we got. See, we got 2 unclosed investigation. It is created. Who is the real name of creator, modification time, current status, everything, right? Everything is here. So this is the way that Splunk ES manage everything. Are you able to see my Chrome screen? Hello?
Yes, Diksha, we can.
Yes,
We can.
yes, I can.
Okay, so I hope now you understood Splunk ES basics. So let's move to asset and IT concept. Now we know Splunk ES, what it does. We'll move to our main topic, which is known as asset and IT, which is one of the basic pillars of Splunk ES. So suppose there is some hacker or some ex-employee or someone trying to do some phishing attack on our company system, some employees workstation, right? So what is happening, because we are taking all the data of this company's workstation into Splunk, obviously for security reasons, I will get data into Splunk. Now here you will see there are 2 scenarios. One is normal Splunk, other is Splunk Enterprise. If I'll get data into this Splunk and I will create an alert for this scenario, what will I get? Sorry. I will get an alert basically which is having a host name, maybe computer name, IP, port, or maybe some error details, action details, right? Whatever already, available in the data. But now here you see alert with the Splunk ES. This is having all that what above was having, but it is having something add-on. It is having the workstation owner details. The owner, what access he's having, whether he's an admin, whether he's an user, what is his location, his phone number, and like what if I know what user access is, so I know what is the level of severity of threat. If someone has hacked admin laptop, obviously it is a great company threat for us. But if someone has hacked some people like who don't have much access, then it is severity is less. So there we can see, by using asset and identity, we are doing a data enrichment, which is so helpful for us. So asset and identity concept helps you to find out what, why, and where about security use cases and help you to drill down, find root cause. Okay, so let's get into next. Now you understood why it is asset and identity data is important, what additional it is giving you, right? So now let's talk about how to get the data, right? So there are three ways to get the data. First is manually. When I'm saying manually, it means like in your company, there is some admin who is, manually updating in an Excel. If a user is joining, his user details, his access details, everything. And then you're uploading that Excel to Splunk and then use it as a lookup. Second is LDAP. We are going to talk in depth about it in later on slides. Next, in use cloud service provider data. It means you should be having some cloud service provider who is ingesting your asset and identity data into Splunk. For an example, you can have your data on AWS. Okay. So now we are using LDAP. As I told you, we are going to discuss it further because the reason is that we are using LDAP in our network too. Okay, so we are using LDAP, or we can say Active Directory technology. So I will share you how to get data through that. First, you have to configure a supporting Splunk add-on, which is known as SA LDAP search. Now in this add-on, when you will fetch the data from AD server, you will not having any index, source or source type. You should query this add-on by LDAP command. Okay, of course things will run on back end, but at UI level you have to query this add-on by hitting this LDAP command and you will get your data. I'll show you why and how. Okay, so guys, this is a table which you can see in many Splunk docs and maybe many blogs, right? So here it is showing what technology your company is using and what data you can get out of that and by using what add-on. Is it, do you find it helpful? Hello?
Yes, Diksha.
Okay, guys, so here we were using Active Directory. Through this table, we came to know we can use this add-on and this will give us asset and identity data both. And maybe in your company, you are using Cisco ISC, you are using Sophos, you are using AWS, you can select add-on as you want. Now let's move to next. As now I have downloaded the add-on. Installing add-on, there's not a very big deal because we are Splunkers here. We know how to download and install it normally by untarring it, right? Now the next thing is configuration, right? So here we have shown you configuration where, this is yellow highlights. In the configuration page, you have to go and there are yellow highlights. I have put it here. These are something fields mandatory you have to fill to configure SA LDAP search add-on. And if someone is saying, I don't have detail of base DN and all, from where would I get it? Obviously from Active Directory admin, the person who has set Active Directory in your network. Okay. So once this is configured, now you have to query this add-on. And how you will query this? By using LDAP command. And where can you find this LDAP command? This is the link of Splunk docs under which there is a documentation of this add-on. Inside that you have that LDAP search command. Okay. Now I have told you LDAP command, so obviously you can go to that link, but I will show you on this screen so that you can have it in documentation also. This is the LDAP search command to get identity data. The command will be similar for all different companies. Only thing you need to change is domain. You should know your company's AD domain. Suppose there's company XYZ, so maybe the domain is xyz.com, right? Something like that. So you should know your domain. Once you put your domain here, you run this command, it will give you what? It will give you end date. It means user end date, when his account will expire, when the user was created, by when created. Okay, category of that user, what category, he's an employee, he's an admin, mobile number, telephone. Now you see some of the fields are renamed because they were not in good shape according to Splunk ES. So there's the employee first name, last name, mail as email, telephone number. So these are the details which we get from identity. I'll tell you next that why they are important. So next, this is an sorry. So next, this is LDAP query to retrieve asset data. Okay, so this query is for, that query was identity and this query for asset, because both datas are different, although they are coming from same add-on. Same here, you need to remove this domain thing. And in the table, you can see the details are related to asset like IP, MAC, anti-host, DNS, owner, priority, okay, city, country, everything related to that workstation. Let's move next. So guys, any question till here now? Anything you have not understood which I have explained, or if I'm going fast?
Can you show us where this LDAP query in the Splunk is?
Yeah, I'll show you. I'll show you in the practical.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Yep. Thanks, Gopinath. And any more questions, guys? Okay, thanks, Deb. So guys, let's talk for asset and identity lookup creation. Now we know we have data, how to create lookup, obviously, right? Because we can't do a data enrichment by just joining to index, right? So let's see. I have told you, we will use LDAP query. So obviously we should have an LDAP query. So by that, we can make a query and hit some CSV to fill that data inside it. So four tab I'll show you now, they will be understood by everyone because they are normal Splunk. 1, 2, 3, and 4. See, so you have to create a custom table. I'm creating a custom table known as mydata.csv. Next is I'm defining it like normal Splunk. Then I am filling it by using that LDAP query. And then I'm saving it LDAP query and scheduling it to automatically fill it again and again, because maybe in 24 hours some new employee will join or some workstation will change. So it has to be updated. So now when I'll run my input lookup command, so pipe input lookup mydata.csv. Actually, this has to show what? All of my identity details by using LDAP, right? But what will happen? See, you have to do one thing more here. You have to go in Splunk ES, go in configure ES data enrichment identity management. As soon as you will define your normal Splunk lookup here, okay, what you will see in just like some time, it will take some time to work. You will run this input lookup and you will see whatever output was here in this lookup has been transferred to this lookup. And this lookup is nothing but this lookup is your identity lookup of Splunk ES, about which I was talking in the whole session. So finally, this is that. Okay, now I'll show you some practical and we will get into, you can ask me questions and we will see how actually this happened, right? Because our main motive is right now to set up an identity Splunk ES lookup, right? Okay, so obviously this is the same question I know popping in some people's mind right now. Okay, so guys, let's go for practical. My Chrome screen is visible or it's like very small fonts, something like that?
No, I think it's very clear and visible.
Okay, guys. So yes, I'll go step by step as I have told you in that slide. So first you need to run a LDAP search query. So guys, this is the safe search which I have made with that LDAP search query. I will run it and show you how the query route. So I have already make it run here. Can you see this? So wait, I think my laptop needs some charge. Okay, guys, sorry, my laptop was just going off. So now you see this LDAP query, we have changed our domain, and now see, you see the output. See, all of our company employees are here, right? And if you will see one of the employee, Krishna, right? So he has joined somewhere else and he left us. So it was like 20th May. It was his user ID and date. He can't use after that. We have just disabled everything. So this is the identity data which I was talking about, and this is the LDAP query which is hitting that add-on. Okay, so now this is the save search. We know in this LDAP query, I have given output lookup avotrix underscore identity. Let's see how. So I told you first we need to create a normal CSV, avo.csv. We have created it. Firstly, it is blank. Then we define it. We know everything like in normal Splunk how we define. Can you see avo.csv, avotrix identity? Okay, and how do we fill that? By using the save search. So I think it's clear, right? The flow. Now the thing is that the normal Splunk work is done. The last part which I have shown you how to define this lookup in Splunk ES. Let's go there. So I'll go step by step so that you can see the path. Enterprise security. We'll go to configure as I've shown you there. We'll go to data enrichment. We'll go to asset and identity management. So guys, here you will see asset lookup, asset field, identity lookup, identity field, right? So right now I'll show you practical for identity. Similarly, you have LDAP query for asset, same. There's nothing difference. You can set it up. Okay. So let's go to identity lookup. So there are 3 lookups which are coming in package of Splunk ES. They are some default lookups. So let them be. You want to enable them, disable them. That's fully your choice. Okay. Now then. You see this one was not there. What I did, I clicked new configuration, then I selected my lookup definition. What was that? That was, sorry, avotrix, whatever definition you had made, like avotrix identity, right? After select this, you will put a name, by which name you want to call it here, the category, the description. Okay. Blacklist. What is blacklist? You don't want to, because obviously there's data, so indexer will be coming in picture. You don't want a bundle replication, so you are doing a blacklist. Then the type of data, it is identity data. Field exclusion, if you want to exclude some field. Okay, and if you will exclude identity field here by chance, and identity field is what? It is the user. Okay, so then what field you will take for the correlation, then you can add new fields here for that convention. So once you save it, you will get exactly like this. See, this was the definition in normal Splunk. We have made a new definition here, and here we also name is the same, right? Now let's go to see how actually my data went into some new Splunk, a new lookup, right? Let's go here. Before then, that I'll show you a normal data. Just wait. How data is looking here. This is the data. There are 34 employees, and these are some employees. Now we'll see here what is happening. Yes, so I have disabled, I have enabled this, and these are by default. It's not having my company's employee details. So yeah, and enable just this one will give the data. These are giving the demo data. So next is before then this, I'll take you to the search preview. You see this search preview. This will tell you what is happening in the backend. See, identity lookup expanded. This was the name of identity lookup Splunk ES. Add entity source administrative identity. This was a default lookup which I have shown you the name. Next is add entity source avotrix identity. This is my lookup. Next is static. This is again a default lookup, right? What is happening? All of these entities are adding. Then there are some commands to get them on a same platform. And what finally happening? Everything is getting into appending into identity lookup expanded. And the main command working here is entity merge. So what did entity merge command do? Entity merge command merge different entities all together at the same platform by reference of one field. Okay. So let's run this. Let's run this one. Let's see if it is having our data or not. This 34 fields, if it is having or not. Okay. See, it is having 85 because, you know, I told you that administrative lookup, that's a like by default lookup is Splunk. Yes, they are not having any details. Let's see R. Okay, they will be having last because they are proper employed. See, every data is here. All the 34 fields. So this is how it is changing place, right? This is how from one lookup to other lookup data is going on. I'll show you one more thing. Dave, I think I have answered your questions. I think Gopi asked that question.
So
Gopinath,
you are saying, yeah,
Yeah.
so you are saying that this entity merge command at the end. So
Yes,
that
yes.
is the one which renaming our lookup means moving our data from the lookup that we created to this identity lookup expanded.
Yes, yes. So what it is
Okay.
doing, it is merging multiple. Even suppose I have made this lookup, next day you will make one lookup, okay? And you will, what you will do, you will define your lookup here only, right? Maybe some other you are taking manually. I am taking from LDAP, you will take from AWS, okay? So you will define here only. When you will go to search preview, you will see it will merge your data also along with me. So if like 3-4 people are making lookup, it will merge everyone's lookup. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So now
So,
question. Yeah. Tell me.
so we can merge the data from any type of sources, like even
Yeah.
for all the sources like LDAP, AWS all together.
Yes.
At
Yes.
once.
Yes. Yes. For that, there are some rules which are going to discuss. Okay. So you see this
Okay.
identity fields, because if you're going to merge data, you should be aware that, you know, field name should be same. So see, Splunk ES is defining what field name can you make, right? That's why you have seen when I've showed you the LDAP query, I have used rename command, right? Other than this, if you want some additional field coming from your some data source, then you can do add new field. Then there is some case sensitive match. So there are many options like in normal Splunk ES, you know, case sensitive. You know, you can put bar like not more than 20. Anything you can do, just you have to explore this screen. Okay. So, okay. Once my identity is here, let me see what can I do more. Let's go to, I think I have it. Okay. Identity center. You see from that lookup it is taking and giving me details about all of my identities working in my system, right? So here it's also very good to see a view of total identities, right? So guys, I think this practical part is done, and if no more questions, we can move to next. Any questions, guys?
No.
Okay, okay, thanks. So yeah, I've just documented here for you. Even sometimes you're not able to find in Splunk ES after my session, you can see it. Okay, next is I have done lookup, I have done data enrichment. So now capture all of this together and we'll do one thing, we'll make a use case. So just one question before that I'll continue. So much of guys, you're working in Splunk. Can anyone share any security use case they have made?
Hi, Diksha.
Hi, Chetan. Yeah, tell me.
Hi, Chetan this side. I'd like to share some of my use cases regarding
Chetan, your
security.
voice is very low. Yeah.
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, hello guys. Chetan Gaikwad this side. So, as we are discussing about that security use cases, I would like to share a use case which I have encountered. It's regarding my firewall, Zixel firewall app. So in our organization, while working, we use VPN connectivity for security purpose. Like user connect to the VPN and they start working regarding in our Splunk, like searches and all. So to find out when any users are connecting to VPN, it is during their office hours or away from office hours. So to keep the track of the users who can connect with the VPN, we can create a panel where we can find the user who did connect with the VPN out of office hours or during the office hours. So we can let everyone know that some of the users who are connecting to the VPN, are they connecting out of the office hours or doing some other things? So I thought of this as like a security use case.
Yeah, that's an
Second use case
interesting
I can,
security use. Okay.
there is one more thing. Can I speak?
Yeah, sure. I thought you.
Yeah. The
Please.
second use case we can thought of like VPN login field by 3 consecutive times. Like some of the user connect with the VPN and maybe there is another user who is trying to access another user's VPN. So basically they would know the correct credentials. So they would try to log into the VPN with the incorrect details. So when the user trying to log in VPN, but he's putting login credentials incorrectly by 3 consecutive times or any number we can define. So there may be chances here the user is not knowing the correct credentials and trying to log into VPN, or maybe there is some different user who is trying to get login VPN. So we can track this activity and this can come under any security issue.
Right. And what was
That's
the
it.
data source, Chetan?
It's regarding firewall index.
Okay.
It's basically firewall logs.
Okay, great. Thanks for detailed info, and thanks for bringing up some more security use cases. Guys, anyone else? Okay, I think Raja has sent something. I'm not able to read properly.
I've built few. We use this in our SIEM implementation.
Okay.
Few are like login from multiple sources at the same time. Okay, just to be sure, we actually use ES. So we have this application and infra SIEM completely implemented for around 700 plus applications. So yeah, so we have detections for brute force, privilege escalations, and short-lived accounts, and multiple source logins. So we do have a lot. So I'm just picking up and pinging them here. So maybe you can use it as a reference.
Okay. Thanks,
Sure.
thanks, Raja, for the reference.
Yeah, thanks, Raja. And I can say like the one of the very popular use cases like concurrent logins, which means like the same user or maybe two different user IDs being used from same static IP, source IP, and also like the same user ID being um, used from different countries. So these are very popular use cases, as Raja mentioned, that even we use it. And yeah, apart from that, brute force attack, like the how many attempts had happened for login, these are very good use cases. I think data exfiltration. Wow, Raja, I think he has very good hold on.
Right.
Yes, yeah. So he is putting nice use cases, but technically, I think it's very good to see that Raja has put, and I wish to see even others who don't have the experience can also Google, security use cases with Splunk, and they would get to know a few of the sample use cases even Splunk has posted in their site. So that's another opportunity for you to learn, just for information. Yeah, back to you, Diksha. Thank you.
Anyone else? I saw
Hi.
someone speaking.
Yeah, hi Diksha. My name is Sanjeev. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, just wanted to share. I mean, most of the guys have already mentioned the use cases. One of them which we have in our environment, other than the few, is for the lost devices. Normally, what happens is like we have an office around the globe, around 50, 55 offices. So there are certain instances where the user travels and they lose their device. So what we do is like we have created a dashboard. We tag their machines, their user ID to those dashboards and monitor their activity, especially for those lost devices, uh, which keeps an eye on the activity if it comes out from those devices.
Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting one, like lost and found. Yep.
Yeah.
Thanks, Sanjeev, for sharing. Oh, okay, guys.
Sanjeev,
So
Sorry, this is Ashish here. Sanjeev, when you say that, if a device is lost, don't you guys disable those devices or wipe and clean as per the company's policy? Because we also have, company devices which are given to the employees, and then if they are traveling or maybe, they lose it, as soon as they report that it is lost, we, as per the company's policy, we go ahead and disable it. And as soon as we disable the wipe, clean, and disable, we lose access and we are not able to monitor. So how are you guys addressing that issue?
Well, there are a couple of things. The steps what you told will work only once the device gets connected to the network. So other than monitoring it, what we also do is like from our the other tools, we try to isolate that machine. So as the machine comes into a network, it gets isolated. But beyond that, I mean, we also take care of certain instances where the rules what we have set up or the disabling part what we have configured, if it doesn't work and we still see some kind of events coming. So it gives an idea like whether our policies are also working, and if it is not working, where are the things which we need to clean it up. It's more like also other than the devices, the user activity also being monitored. Sometimes what happens is like other than the device, the user activity can be found suspicious. Although the device might be stolen, we have logged it. We had honestly, there are certain users we can't say like they're smart enough. I have seen users who uh, enter their password on their laptop post-it note and they close it, and they lose it, and the password is accessible all over the place. So there are many instances. So what we do is like other than the devices, we also monitor the user activity. So it gives a two dimension process where we handle both the security configurations, applications, what we have in configured. And also if it is not working, we can track it on the Splunk and see what are the things which are missing. I'm not sure
Got
whether,
it. Thanks.
yeah,
No,
I'm not sure
that
whether it has
definitely
been clear.
answered that. Yeah, that definitely answers my question. So, the one of the thing is the reality check, wherein whatever configurations, whatever things we have, applied, that is taken care or not. And the second
Exactly.
thing is you got a very right point, which in enterprise security we do is insider threat. So there could be a possibility that there's this UEBA tool which is also part of
Yeah,
enterprise security, right? Wherein the user behavior can be monitored if we get those data, right? Got it.
absolutely.
Thanks for
Absolutely.
answering that.
Yep. Thanks.
Okay, guys, thanks. So just adding one more point with Splunk Splunk ES package, you get some automated security use case. The query is already built, everything is done. You can enable them. Just to get the result, you should have an CIM compatible data, compatible data, and you should have this asset identity lookup ready, and maybe some more things, but they are there. You can use them if you know Splunk ES fully. Okay. So here I'm showing you one of the security use case that was something known as expired user login activity or network. As per the name, you can understand. So suppose someone is my ex-employee, has left organization, and in my organization, in my servers, I have so much important details and everything. If someday I see he's trying to log in, or maybe someone is trying to log in by his user ID, so I have to take care of that thing, right? Because it's a security threat to my network. So here we'll see how data enrichment work again. See, this is the, I mean, I can run that for you, but there is the result I have saved for you. So you see tstats command, what is happening. Tstats command, we all know. And as I have told you, it is working on data models. So I have used a data model query. From authentication data model, all the logs which are filling data in authentication, I'm getting user and their latest time of login. Post that, because I have set an IoTix identity lookup, which is finally merged here in identity lookup, I am finding the end date, which was not earlier in the data. It was in the identity data, right? So end date is also very important for this use case. So I got it from this lookup. Now you see, as I told you, Krishna, the person, right, one of our employee, he left the company and we just ended his account on 20th May, but later on you see maybe it's a dummy login we have done. So it's like 15th of September we saw a login. Shall I approve it? Oh.
Sorry about that. That was mistakenly sent from
That's
my
fine.
mobile.
Yep. Okay. So guys, this is by using this lookup, you can find this, and this was the detail which you were not finding easily in Anidata, right? So this is the explanation which I have just told you. And next, let's move to next. It's taking some pause. So let's conclude. I think you might be having some questions, some questions I have captured when I was learning this. So the question you guys must be having, like, if I am putting my lookup data in another lookup data and then I'm using it, why can't I use my lookup directly, right? Anyone was thinking like that? Hello? Or the logic is clear to all?
I think it is clear. Yeah.
Okay, but still I'll explain this, okay, because we have one more point to cover. So like if in company you are not following that logic and every person is making their own lookup, and then the person who is making a security case, it will be a mess for them first to rename their fields and then make a full query, they do data enrichment, it will be very difficult. Secondly, there is no automatic data model in normal Splunk. You have to manually make that data model compatible. Then only you can work with data model data, right? But here, as I have told you, even like 10 people make different lookups. They are fetching in same lookup. And how? Because they already know the Splunk ES rules that the field names cannot be different. So the writing query part is very easy. There is no mess. Even there is transition or we need to, edit query written by someone else. Next is the part asset and identity lookup. As soon as data will generate, there is a data model forms known as asset and identity. If you have Splunk ES in your systems, go in data model and check. There is a new data model. You will find asset and identity, which will be carrying data of asset and identity similarly as in lookup. So now when you have data in data models, it is very easy to work because most of us know, like if people have not so much knowledge about commands and all, like at big level, they work with data model very well, right? So data models are very easy to work. So this is an again advantage of using this. So let's move to Q&A if you have any other questions.
One question. Does anyone have any experience in integrating CrowdStrike data with their asset and identity data model?
So I have not done CrowdStrike with asset and identity,
Okay.
but I have done with, yeah. Anyone else? Okay. But I think if you can see in the Excel which I've shown you is what it was showing CrowdStrike keyword.
I guess not.
So Raja, let me try to understand. We do have CrowdStrike data coming into our environment. We are getting that via HEC, I believe. And post that, I think you can run saved. Yeah.
You mean the FTR data, right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
So if we get the data and on that data, I don't remember that if an asset or identity
because
lookup is being
in FTR you have something called managed assets and not managed assets.
Okay.
So I was just thinking if that comes under the secondary data source from the CrowdStrike FTR.
Okay.
So I just wondered if anyone has implemented because I'm working on it right now. But
okay. So frankly speaking, we have not implemented that as a lookup, but ideally that should be quite straightforward. If you have that data, you can create a saved search which will have that as a
right.
Extract that information into a lookup, and then you can use that into the the mainstream as Diksha explained, I believe.
Right.
Though I have not tried for sure, but
okay.
I can also have a look at it whether that will add any value to the environment, like the environment is being configured at this point in time.
Yeah. No, I just wanted to understand which sources in FDR is directly used so that I can utilize the same ones.
Understood.
Hello.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, as Ashish mentioned, Raja, you can try, and if not, then maybe you can let him. Thanks, Ashish, for answering.
Sure.
Yep. And
One question maybe to Ashish again.
Mhm.
Ashish, what is the okay? It may be a bit deviated from this topic, but please excuse me for that. What is the amount of license that the FDR data consumes per day?
In our situation, I'm just giving you a ballpark number. I think it is utilizing any which ways it is going to, there's a separate index, and I think it is taking anywhere around 900 GB per day to a terabyte.
Okay. Then okay, yeah, then it's okay.
Yeah. So because it gives you a lot of data, and we are not dropping any data at this point in time, but we are in plan of having Cribble in between, so that Cribble can filter out some of the data which we don't need, and then
Okay.
send that out so that we can save something on the licensing. But that's long-term goal. But at this point in time, it is a good amount of data which is coming in.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yep, 900 GB is too huge.
We actually hit 1.6 TB in first day of ingestion. So,
Yeah.
and we stopped it actually after that.
Yeah.
So I just
Actually,
wanted to know if the
actually, I also remember, just because of the same reason, because we did not expected that the volume would be very high. But
yeah.
we have a very big license, so we did not violated the license. But then we have lot of alerting, right? That alert popped up that suddenly we have increase, or a standard deviation has crossed of the licensing. So that's where I recollect that we are crossing anywhere around 900 GBs a day.
Okay, got it. Thanks, Ashish.
No problem.
Okay. So thank you guys for joining us in session, and you can complete feedback form for this session.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks everyone for joining session. Yeah.
Guys.
Can we have the slides?
Sure. We would be uploading this video directly in the YouTube, and it would be available in the page as well. I think slides, I'm sure we can upload it in the description of YouTube where you can find it directly. But I may have to check, but this video would be uploaded in YouTube for sure.
What is the channel for the channel of your YouTube?
Can someone? No, I think directly in the Splunk page you should get it, or maybe someone has any.
Let me cut it, Vignesh. So you'll able to find that YouTube video as well as the slides on the Splunk Mumbai user group under the event or the session which just happened. It would be uploaded after this session gets over, like 1 hour or 2 hour. You'll get it till tomorrow morning, I think, if I'm right. I'm sure like this answer your questions.
Correct. Yep. That's the situation. You can find that on the Splunk the user group Mumbai page.
By the way, I have
You'll
attached
find
the
all the
link in the chat for the YouTube channel.
Thanks, Ashwin.
Yeah, thanks, Ashwin. Thanks, Ajit. Thanks, Ashwin. Yeah. All right. Anyone with any question?
Not a question, Vignesh. Just to add up, like we had a pretty good interaction today with a number of use cases which we discussed about. So I was thinking like you'll get a feedback form, but if you want to collab more on this topic or any other thing, so you can just ping us on our social media sites, or like go into Slack and just reach out to us. We can have a good interaction in the future.
Yep. Thanks, Ajit, for adding that. Yes, as Ajit mentioned, we can definitely help you out with any topic. If at all you have, a doubt with, we can get it explained to you in the form of this video. Or if at all anyone has any, interest in conducting any sessions, we are definitely open to that. You can reach us via the Slack channels or directly through the user groups. Yeah, these are the modes for now. So I think it was very interactive. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining this session. And the questions being asked was very relevant and it was very interactive. I believe so. It was interesting for you guys as well. Thank you so much. I think we have another session coming up next week. I hope to see you all guys there. So for now, I think thank you once again. Let's wind up for the day.
Thanks for you all.
Bye,
Thank you,
guys.
guys.
Thanks, Diksha.
Bye.
Yeah. Bye.